everyone, and welcome to day 4 of Play NYC 2020. With Play NYC going virtual this year, it was a no-brainer for us to welcome the team from Genvid Technologies as a key partner for the show. Genvid brings streamed games to life for viewers and creators through interactivity. Kicking things off today is Genvid's own Jonathan Munoz, who will show you the history, the evolution, and the future of viewer participation. Take a look.
Hey everyone, welcome to this talk where we'll be covering what it can look like when the lines between player and viewer start to blur and how the phenomenon of participating in a sport or game grew over time. For some background on me, my name is Jonathan Munoz, and I currently work as a business development manager at an interactive streaming company called Genvid Technologies. Prior to this, I worked at Riot Games in their esports as well as research and development initiatives, where I helped launch their first mobile and board games. I was also briefly a producer at that game company, the folks that made Journey and Sky. And yes, that's not a typo and is indeed how they spell the name of the studio. And today we're going to cover how viewer participation evolved in traditional sports throughout history and how games are emulating this, the current state of viewer participation in today's games, and the many forms interactive viewing experiences can take and what this means for the future of our industry. So let's start by looking back at the past. When we think of the modern marathon, it's easy to jump to, or when we think of the marathon in general, it's easy to jump to its modern version that is ran to much fanfare and media coverage, one where we as viewers are able to see everything that's happening and see all of the participants and their progress along the whole course. With modern technologies like multiple camera angles, drones, map overlays, we as a viewer can see everything that's happening throughout the entire race. But that wasn't always the case in the original version. In ancient times, you would need to pick one spot on the route and would only see a narrow snapshot of what was occurring in the race. Like, imagine just standing there as an onlooker, just in the middle of the wilderness or along this path, and you're standing there for hours at a time, hoping to see what happens. And when something finally does, all you're getting is people running by for just a few seconds, just like whipping right by you. And, that's not exactly the best viewing experience. And so the only way you could meaningfully participate back then was to actually run the marathon yourself. And all that mattered to you was the end result of you as a runner, like where you placed in either first, second, third, or, dead last. And it wasn't about the journey of getting there. It was all about just that end point. Compare this then to the Olympic stadiums of old that were designed from the outset to allow spectators to watch the feats of athletes. This creation of spectating allowed for more than just the people partaking in the action and opened the floodgates for non-participants, being able to engage with a sport. This allowed us to take our seats with, hundreds of others in the stadium and behold the spectacle of javelin tosses or racing chariots or all the other events that you would normally have during the Olympics. And suddenly it became commonplace for sports to be heavily integrated into our day-to-day lives. And as being able to watch without having to join in yourself gave us as spectators a lasting connection to proceedings that had previously only been reserved for those that were actively taking part. And here we have the ancient wonder of the Roman Colosseum, where audiences' cheers and cajoling had a direct impact on the action. With this phenomenon of crowds' input affecting what was happening, we saw an amalgamation of player and spectator, which resulted in an entirely new form of engagement, often referred to as interactive viewing. To contextualize what a jump this was for viewer participation overall, quickly put yourself in the sandals of a Roman of old. The crowd is quieted, so a verdict can be rendered on what the next spectacle will be. Will you, as the audience, choose a reenacted naval battle with Carthage, maybe an acrobatic display by a circus troupe, or will you choose to unleash the lions on the last round of gladiators? The choice is completely up to you and those around you in the audience. And knowing you can have these kinds of interactions is incredibly engaging. And this imagining isn't too far off from what we see today in the form of energizing the home team's defenses with our cheers, or frantically shouting out to a downed boxer for them, like imploring them to get up one more time. It's this ability to impact what we're watching with our own actions as non participants, non players, that is a core reason why attending modern sporting events is so compelling and continues to occupy so much of our thinking and our like how we as a modern audience think about going to these sporting events. And with these three examples, we've covered the evolution of audience engagement in traditional sports. And now I want to cover and talk about how video games are closely mirroring this path. So, to start, we have an early version of League of Legends. And I know it's really hard to fathom now, given Riot has established League of Legends as a monolith of esports, but in its beginnings, League was pretty much just a participant-focused game. It was you and four teammates against an opposing five enemies. The early versions of the game did not have any kind of spectator client or easy way to follow a match unless you yourself were playing. I remember learning about the game, and when it first came out, I had to ask friends how to get a good sense of what was going on and what I was in for when I decided to play. But ultimately, it was easiest to just jump in myself, as learning how to play and experiencing the fun was best achieved by being an active participant, just like the early marathon. Overwatch similarly has the actual participants in the game driving what happens, but it was built from the outset to be a sport that would be watched by many spectators, both in person as well as shown here, like all these people in the audience and in this stadium, but also digitally on streaming platforms like YouTube. The developers realized that it was crucial to make the game accessible for people to watch and put great effort into thinking about the viewer experience overall. We see this in their commitment to foster an engaged audience for their esports Overwatch League, as well as developing new ways for people to watch that we'll be getting into a little bit later on. Also, an important note about modern spectating: with the creation of streaming platforms like YouTube, Twitch, and a number of others, we've removed the physical seating limitations, and now digital stadiums can dynamically scale to fit any number of viewers. And now, just like the Coliseum of old, this game, Chicken, from Catapult Studios, has constructed a digital arena where stream viewers can once again vie for who loses and who triumphs. But now the viewers can do so from the comfort of their own homes. This level of interactivity is even more involved than what we saw in the ancient times with the Roman Colosseum, as it not only allows viewers to directly impact what they're watching, but it provides them the option of how and in what ways they want to interact. From being a passive spectator that can check out the stats of an individual combatant or creature, as you can see here, to actively deciding who will fall next or who will triumph. And so with Chicken and other games beginning to create these types of experiences, we've seen ourselves as the games industry entering this last phase of audience participation and following the path laid out for us by traditional sports step by step. So let's discuss how these learnings are applying to the current state of viewing content. One of the clearest manifestations of games embracing the long established audience focus of traditional sports is the number of people watching some form of gaming video content. And gaming video content in this context refers to all things related to games. Anywhere from watching a Let's Play or watching Twitch, basically someone playing games, to checking out a developer preview of upcoming content, like when someone's doing a new patch on something, going and watching that. So many people are watching this kind of content that it's now grown to be larger than the viewership of HBO, Netflix, ESPN, and Hulu combined. To put this number in perspective, it's more than twice as large as the entire population of the US, and that's just data from 2017. It's only continued to grow year over year, and all indications have pointed towards this remaining the trend for the foreseeable future. Oh yeah, even Netflix, a company credited as completely upending the way people view content, is admitting in their quarterly earnings report that it has a hard time pulling eyeballs away from Fortnite and all the content surrounding it. Even though this is one of our industry's tentpole games, like it's where a lot of people, even outside of games, are aware of it, it's a super massive phenomenon. It's extremely indicative that of the appeal of gaming content to the public at large, that Netflix, freaking Netflix, the default joke of where people spend most of their passive spectating time, is duking it out with our industry, the games industry, for attention, for viewers' attention specifically. Like, if we consider how this plays out in your average household, this means that when people, especially younger viewers, are determining what they're going to spend their time watching, games like Fortnite, Valorant, Minecraft, Dead by Daylight, all of these are consistently winning out over traditional TV and movies. Having grown up myself in a time before game streaming was commonplace, like this still blows my mind, and it's why it's so important for us all as game developers to think not just about how our games are played, but also how people watch them and what they're finding engaging while doing so. Like, what appeals to them in the overall watching experience, and for us to think about that. This actually kind of made me just think about how much Netflix's The Witcher series might actually owe to the fans of the game for its large viewership numbers, but that's a different topic for another talk. So I'll keep us moving along. To also underline this point of just how many people are watching games in one way or another, Fortnite earlier this year had a massive digital collaboration with artist Travis Scott, where viewers were able to partake in this experience either in the Fortnite game client or select streaming platforms, and people were talking about it like everywhere. For the week it was going on, my social media and news feeds were nothing but people gushing about what an awesome experience it was, despite the fact that there was no active game to play. It was just a thing that we all watched together and all partook in as viewers. This event proved to be a smashing success, as over 45 million people watched the event over the course of only a few days, which is almost 3 times as many people as watched the 2019 NBA Finals. Similarly, Roblox, which is both a game and a game creation platform for its players, hosted their annual Content Creators Award ceremony earlier this year, and this event, called the Bloxies, had 600,000 viewers outside the game client and over 4 million concurrent users inside the game. And this is just looking at the one or few time events that games are hosting. Ones that, it's like only happens once, like the Bloxies, or things that happen a couple times, like the Travis Scott collaboration. When we look at a snapshot of data from Twitch's viewership of just everything that was being watched on the platform from June 2020, we see that over 1.5 billion hours were spent watching content on Twitch. Like, this is a truly staggering amount of time, and puts into perspective how much attention our games can command. In short, a lot of people are watching a lot of games. The explosion of game viewing has also made traditional broadcasters extremely hungry to get this kind of content on their platforms. For example, NASCAR's iRacing Pro Invitational Series, which is run completely online, has repeatedly surpassed its own viewership records with about 1 million viewers during the event they held earlier this year. This has increasingly driven NASCAR to put more resources towards the series as it continues to have an extremely strong showing and continues to demonstrably show how engaged people are that are watching it. Riot Games' League of Legends is no slouch either. Their North American League is ranked the third most popular professional sports league in the United States among 18 to 34-year-olds. It's gotten so popular that ESPN spent an undisclosed amount to the tune of a few $100 million on the broadcast rights. This means that League of Legends now commands the same broadcasting dollars as some traditional sports shown on television. And just get some water. Ah, nice. And lastly, viewers are engaging heavily with the interactive experiences that are currently available. A great example of this is Twitch Plays Pokemon, which took, if for those of you that aren't familiar, it took a traditionally single-player game and morphed it into a group playing experience, one where viewers could enter various commands in Twitch chat to control the movement of the character or what Pokemon is being summoned into battle. Like, viewers could choose, is Charizard going to pop out or is it going to be a Dragonite? And this proved extremely engaging as there were more than 36 million total views hosting in the channel hosting this, with over 122 million viewer commands sent over the duration of the event. And this was quite a phenomenon as it allowed for everyone in the chat, everyone in the channel, to have a say in what was happening, and led to some pretty amazing moments that have cemented Twitch Plays Pokemon as a quintessential moment in modern gaming fandom. I remember playing a lot with this and just continuously trying to type in commands to make the player go one way or another. And so this to me specifically also stands out as a really cool moment. We saw people being able to engage with what was happening. Similarly, tournament holders such as ESL, StarLadder, Faceit, and others have partnered with us at Genvid to provide new and engaging viewing experiences specifically for Counter-Strike Global Offensive. This provides audiences on streaming platforms like Twitch and YouTube with a number of interactive features, from seeing different stats of players, to pulling up the match scoreboard whenever they want, to even following the camera perspective of their favorite player. And it's because viewers have found these and other features so compelling that we've seen 1 million unique active viewers who generated over 32 million clicks. So this ability to choose how they want to watch and how they want to affect what they're seeing on screen is something audiences are already engaging with and have begun to seek out more actively whenever there's opportunities to do so. And with this information on the current state of audience participation in mind, I now want to share a glimpse of where we can see this future of interactive streaming and audience participation going for games. So to quickly recap, we see the beginning of audience participation being primarily meant for the enjoyment of active players. This is true of both traditional sports and video games in the form of the Ancient Marathon and early versions of League of Legends. Then those that allowed non-participating spectators to watch the feats of players. For sports, this would be the creation of the ancient Olympic stadiums, and for modern games, it includes esports such as the Overwatch League, or Riot Games' esports endeavors as well, with League of Legends and now Valorant. And something that's important to think about the modern side again, modern esports and modern viewing, is it allows for both physical arenas and digital streaming platforms that remove that audience number limitation. And finally, we as a games industry are catching up to sports and are beginning to provide experiences that allow our viewers to directly impact what they're watching on screen. However, whereas the Romans were bound by the physical limitations of reality for their Colosseum and all the feats that they wanted to show, Chicken and other games that utilize interactive streaming are able to create their own interpretations of what viewer participation can look like. This means that going forward, it's going to be imperative, imperative of us as game makers to think about all of these layers, not just individually, not just as segmented things of doing features here and there, but as a fluid interactivity spectrum with new opportunities unlocked for engaging players and as well as generating revenue in meaningful ways that offer players really cool experiences. Like, to illustrate this, imagine watching a stream where watching a stream of a game where when you enter the channel, you're greeted with basic information of what this game is and how it's both played and watched. You're able to pull up the scoreboard at any point and customize whether you're following the perspective of a given player or if you want to, take a bird's eye view, so that way you can have an anchored camera angle in the level and be able to have a very cinematic, panoramic view of what's happening. It provides the opportunity to look at different ways of perspective. And when as we're watching and we're approaching the final boss, we as viewers can determine how many and what kinds of minions will spawn at the boss's side. These are just a few of the features that are possible with interactive streaming and are all things that games can consider offering to their viewing audiences. To further illustrate this, I'll now take us through the different tiers of interactive streaming and how each of the games I've mentioned, League of Legends, Overwatch, and Chicken, are using them. The first type of interactive streaming that I want to talk about is called the Informational Tier. You want to use this tier in your games when you want to expose key details to your viewers that help them get a grasp on what your game is about and how to play or watch it more effectively. This can range from showing player stats, a 2D map of player positions, to even providing bits of lore about places in your game's world. Like, picture watching a stream and being able to hover over some dark obelisk and it revealing the backstory of a faction in the game. This and you can think of this as this tier as proving you as a game developer can, or not proving, excuse me, providing you as a game developer the ability to give your viewers a real-time wiki on your game where it's built directly into the video stream and you can control the content. Like, all of a sudden now you can have people go to your stream and you as a dev can decide, hey, I want to show this little bit of information, or hey, maybe I want to obfuscate this information that a player would normally get to make the viewing experience a little bit more interesting. There's all kinds of interesting things that can be done here. And here we can see the informational tier being applied in League of Legends via a web overlay in Twitch called Live Tracker. This overlay, which Riot Games built, shows how professional players are playing the game and gives their audiences insight into how to better understand the game, again, both as a player and a viewer. So, like we can see here, we as a viewer can hover over an item to see how it works, or can even follow the path a player takes in leveling up their different skills. And what's interesting about this informational tier too, if I'm someone that's brand new to a game, you can even serve up a tutorialization of, hey, you've never seen this before, this is your first time coming to the channel, here, I'm going to give you key information that you would need that if you've never heard of this game, it makes it easier to understand. The second type of interactive streaming is the customizable tier, which is all about providing your viewers the power to choose how they want to watch. From determining the colors of their HUD to toggling the scoreboard on and off, this tier should be considered when you want to give your viewers options on what is displayed on a screen at a given time. Blizzard uses this to great effect in their Overwatch League, where viewers can easily jump between the different player perspectives to get a unique glimpse of the in-game action. With this, it suddenly becomes much easier for me to follow a player that I'm a fan of, or I can see how they handle approaching certain choke points or managing to line up a shot with a sniper throughout the match. It gives me this lens, this customizable lens of understanding what's happening and picking and choosing how I want to watch. Which is very handy, especially in games like Overwatch, where if it's a first-person shooter, I may actually at times not want that same gameplay perspective. I may want one that's a little bit more cinematic, may let me pick and choose how and what angles I want there. And what's shown here was a massive collaborative effort between Blizzard and Twitch to utilize Twitch's Command Center feature that allows this multiple perspective angles and actually allows viewers to pick, like shown here, to have multiple points of view running simultaneously on screen. So you're suddenly getting all these different points of perspective all at once. And lastly, we have the influential tier, where viewers can have a direct impact on what they're watching. This is a tier that can really set your game apart and should be considered when you want to give viewers agency in the action, like choosing what boss the player will face next, or where a care package can land on the map. Something important to think about when designing your games with this tier in mind, though, is not just what the viewers can do, but how will they do so? It's not just about, hey, like what is someone going to do? How are they going to affect gameplay? It's what mechanism are you going to allow viewers to actually do that thing? For example, if you allow viewers to pick the next map or the next game mode, how will they do so? By a majority vote, by beating others in a viewer versus viewer mini game played within your game stream? The possibilities here are fascinating, and is also why influential features are often where the bulk of time is spent when designing an interactive streaming experience. It is very much thinking about the design and the balance, and it is a core part of the overall offering of your game when you decide to do it, or it can be, because it can be so heavily integrated into what's happening in the gameplay. Here, we can see chicken in action, where viewers represented as digital fowl can cheer on their monster of choice. Like you can imagine every one of those chickens shown in the background potentially being an avatar, a manifestation of us as a crowd and being able to do things with them. And for example, like we can actually cheer to power up monsters' attacks, and can even bring the monster back to life after they've been like knocked down and after they've been on the brink of defeat, like there as well. And whereas my previous examples of Riot Games and Blizzard being massive organizations that can throw plenty of resources at these kinds of endeavors, I want to call out that Catapult, the makers of Chicken, are a lean indie team. Part of this new future of audience participation and us making games that allow for this means all developers being able to create and generate revenue from these kinds of experiences, and providing the tools and insight and experience in how to do so is actually the primary endeavor of our team at Genvid Technologies. So what does this all mean to us as game developers? It means we're in the midst of a sea change now, and we'll continue to see more of these kinds of interactive experiences across all kinds of mediums. Not just games, traditional sports, we'll start seeing this in reality TV, all kinds of different things that can be made as a result of this. And as people that make interactive experiences, we as game developers have a unique perspective and knowledge on how to make this kind of engaging content. And there are now tools that make providing interactivity for your viewing audiences easier, and there's never been a better time to start thinking about how it can apply to your games. Like, this is a large portion of the time that I spend thinking about interactive streaming and audience participation is what is the thing that will really draw in people to want to engage? What is something that's super fun? What is an interactive streamed narrative game that we all play together look like? I spend a lot of time thinking about these things and kind of honestly gushing over them because I think it's so freaking cool. And that pretty much wraps up my talk. I hope this was informative for everyone and that you learned a little bit about what viewer participation has looked like in traditional sports and how video games are learning from that and driving and evolving it even further. I can be reached at any of the places listed here, where I'm always happy to talk about everything we've covered here, from the history of viewer participation to interactive streaming in general, to even Genvid technologies and the free to download SDK that we offer that empower game developers to make these kinds of interactive viewing experiences. And thank you all so much for watching.